What up, this is my Q&A for this Thursday, February 26, 2009. I know I told a lot of you that I'd be doing this Q&A a couple days ago, but something came up. I checked out a couple movies that I've been trying to catch up on. Finally saw the movie that it seems like every fucking film critic is jizzing in their pants over, and what won the Best Picture at the Oscars this past Sunday, the Slumdog Millionaire. Now I gotta say, it is kind of, to some degree, overrated, overhyped. But I gotta say, it was overall an enjoyable film, a good overall film. I would give, the film, overall, I would give it about a 3 out of 4. And I would say it's an enjoyable film, definitely worth watching, worth going out your way to see. But was it, deserving to win 8 Oscars and winning the Best Picture at the Oscars? Then hell no, it was definitely not deserving of that. I would definitely put Frost Nixon, Milk, The Wrestler, and The Dark Knight above it as far as the films. But, even though I feel it's a tad bit overrated, I still probably would put it almost, maybe in the top 6, 7 movies from 2008 that I've seen. And definitely enjoyable watch, but definitely overrated, overhyped movie. If I probably would have saw it back in December, I might have enjoyed it a little more than what I did now, due to the fact it's been hyped up to so much of a degree that, it's going to be obviously pretty much no movie is going to be able to live up to the hype that a movie like that is getting. Unless it's that great, like a Godfather, Goodfellas, or like a Pulp Fiction, which a lot of critics somewhat downed on for some reason. And one HBO series I recently got into watching, which was the series Big Love. Definitely a very original and a definitely, to say the least, interesting series. Another thing I got into is reading a new David Icke book that I got right here, the David Icke Guide to the Global Conspiracy and How to End It. So far, definitely a great read. So sorry for the little delay with this Q&A. I know that's a little rambling that I did at the beginning, but now let me get into my Q&A. The first question is from Instant Classic G1. Which TNA or ROH wrestler would be a perfect fit in the WWE? In my opinion, Robert Roode would be a perfect fit for the WWE. Not that he is the greatest, but he seems to be the type of guy that they would push. For ROH, it would be Claudio Castagnoli, especially with his character now. Gotta definitely agree with what you said about Robert Roode. Not that he's the greatest in-ring performer, but like you said, he is one of those type of guys that WWE would seem to actually want to push. And until recently, WWE did have a little interest in him, but Robert Roode has signed a TNA 5-year extension, so he's going to definitely be with TNA for 5 more years. So WWE had a little interest in him, so it wouldn't have shocked me if they would have been able to get him, that they would actually utilize him and push him. Claudio Castagnoli, I kind of got to disagree with you about Claudio. There is one guy that, after I mentioned what I am about to say about Claudio seems like, not a guy WWE would use. He kind of has the hype, but that's all he has. He doesn't really have the look. His wrestling ability is good. I do admit that his wrestling ability is good, but his wrestling ability, isn't that much different than that many people, other than a couple things he does. And, he doesn't really have the look. He kind of has the size, but he really doesn't have the look, and especially his mic skills aren't really up there either. But I do admit that he's doing pretty good as a heel. Now, the main guy out of WWE, out of TNA and ROH that would be a perfect fit for the WWE would easily be Nigel McGuinness, the current Ring of Honor World Champion. Nigel McGuinness would be one of those guys that would be the perfect fit for the WWE. He has the height, he has the size, he has a good look to him, original, and he's very good in the ring as well, and he doesn't really do anything so outrageous in the ring that he would have to tone down his style. Maybe some of the ways he hits the Tower of London and, maybe somewhat of stiffness in the ring, but he wouldn't really have to change too much of his wrestling ability in WWE, and I think he would be the perfect fit for the WWE. Now, the next question is from Bryce Aru, 1992. Do you think they should bring back Muhammad Hassan back to the WWE? Back in 04 through 05, he got excessive amounts of heat, and he made a great heel. What are your thoughts? Should he come back with the same character and everything? Now, one thing, I'm not really high on these, anti-American gimmicks, because in this day and age, those type of things very rarely actually, get over to the level that it gets a lot of heat for the character. Like right now you see in TNA with Daivari, aka Sheik Abdul-Bashir, it's working to somewhat of an extent, but not really to the level where you're saying, oh, this guy's getting great heat and he should be pushed very hard because of the heat he's generating. So he's not doing that. Now, the Muhammad Hassan character and when Daivari, when them two were together, I think WWE kind of just, you know, put them two together, had them do their anti-American gimmick at just a perfect time, and it was able to, you know, put them over and get them excessive amounts of heat. If they did it now, it would not work. And, you know, Muhammad Hassan, his wrestling ability was very piss poor. I'm not saying that, you know, there's a lot of guys in WWE that do get pushed. They aren't the greatest wrestling, doesn't have the greatest wrestling ability, but he would have to somewhat improve if he would ever came back. And I think, to my knowledge, I think he might even be completely done with wrestling now anyway, but I don't think it would work, you know, right now, the anti-American gimmick, as you see with Kozlov on SmackDown. He's doing like the, you know, the typical Russian gimmick or whatever you would call it, and, you know, that's really not getting him any heat at all, or the crowd's barely even paying attention to him. Now, the next questions are from MANICsxeMARVEL. First question, when do you think, if ever, Christopher Daniels will return to TNA, and do you think he will play a part in the Frontline versus Main Event Mafia feud? I would have said, if you asked me this maybe a month or two ago, I would have been like, okay, Christopher Daniels is definitely going to come back to TNA at some point in the future, and he's going to be a part of this Frontline versus Main Event Mafia feud. But if you kind of look right now, especially in my opinion, this feud's starting to kind of drag out where it's going to probably have to end within the next month or so, and I do expect it to end at the Lockdown pay-per-view, which kind of gets to your next question, which is how long do you think the Main Event Mafia versus Frontline feud will last? I expect them to possibly end the TNA Main Event Mafia versus Frontline feud at Lockdown. It'd be a perfect time to end it. You got the, you know, War Game style match, the great, you know, a great match for them to end it. Hopefully they, you know, do the whole, you know, War Game style S match at Lockdown and book it in a very good way and have the Frontline go over. Then obviously at that point you'll have Sting or Kurt Angle still as world champion. So at the following pay-per-view I would have either Samoa Joe or AJ Styles, preferably AJ Styles, win the world title from either whoever the current champion is at that point, Sting or Kurt Angle. Then, you know, then at that point you kind of build up the younger stars, which is one of those things TNA desperately needs to do. And come back to your last question, I do expect Christopher Daniels at some point to return as himself, just not in a part with the Main Event Mafia versus Frontline feud. Hopefully he returns as himself and not under this suicide gimmick, which is what he's doing right now, at some point in the summer or fall. I do see him some point this year returning as himself. It's going to be interesting to see how they have him return, since obviously they're going to have to mention the whole Feast or Fire thing, or they're just going to ignore that and just say, oh, Christopher Daniels is back, which I could possibly see TNA doing something like that. Then the next question, the WWE title has been flip-flop a lot during the last couple of months. When do you think it will have a steady holder, meaning someone will actually have a reign with it, and who do you think that person will be? I expect after WrestleMania, the SmackDown title, which is the WWE title, will have a steady holder. I see Randy Orton defeating Triple H at WrestleMania, and Randy Orton possibly having about a 5 to 6 month title reign, or at least a title reign to somewhat make that title seem a little prestigious, which is what they need to do with both titles, which is one of those things WWE thinks, you know, title changes are an increased ratings, which sometimes they do. It did more during the Monday Night War era, more as now. You know, title changes really don't increase ratings, unless you maybe count, you know, the fallout of No Way Out, where they did, you know, the whole thing with Edge, which a lot of people seemed like they were interested in what route they were going to go with, because WWE for back-to-back weeks, probably since, and God knows how long, have actually been able to get 4.1 ratings, which I can't remember the last time back-to-back weeks they were actually able to do that. So I say after WrestleMania they'll have a steady holder for the WWE title, and I see it being Randy Orton. Then the next question is from Instant Classic G1. I was watching the Gabe Shoot interview, and he talked about booking Davey Richards versus Tyler Black for the ROH title at the Hammerstein sometime in 2009. Do you think Davey is a worthy world champion, contender / champion? Do you think Davey got screwed out of a world title shot or run with Gabe Sapolsky leaving? I don't think Davey Richards got screwed out of anything with Gabe Sapolsky leaving, because I do see Davey Richards being one of those guys that could possibly be a future world champion for Ring of Honor. by maybe the end of this year or early 2010 as Ring of Honor World Champion. I definitely think he's a worthy contender and a possibly, worthy champion. I'm a huge fan of Davey Richards. He's a good in-ring performer, and I think a feud with Davey Richards and Tyler Black could be excellent. And I have seen the Gabe Sapolsky shoot interview that you're mentioning, which was Gabe's secret ROH booking secrets, which was a pretty decent shoot interview. And I think that it's a possibility this could happen. It'd be interesting to see, Davey Richards versus Tyler Black feud, and I definitely see sometime in the future Davey Richards being at least a contender, possibly even a world champion. I definitely think he's deserving of it because he's a very good in-ring performer. Next questions are from ZMash12. First question, what do I think of Stone Cold Steve Austin being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame this year? I think it's a good thing. Austin's definitely deserving of it. He's one of those guys that really have help WWE get to the level they are. Guys like The Rock, Austin, Hogan, and several other stars are pretty much why WWE is alive these days. And obviously Austin really helped them out a lot during the Attitude Era. And, he's a good entertainer. He wasn't the greatest in-ring performer, but he really wasn't technically supposed to be. He was pretty much, always booked as a brawler for most of his WWE career, especially after he had his neck injury during the match with Owen Hart. After that, he was pretty much had to transition to being pretty much more or less a brawler, and definitely he's deserving of it, and definitely can't wait to see his induction speech this year at the Hall of Fame. Next question is, who do you think is a better champion, Edge versus John Cena? Now, if you look at the World Championship reigns they've had, you're obviously going to say Edge, but obviously World Championship reigns somewhat matter how many reigns you have over, a person that doesn't have as many title reigns, but I would say more of the quantity of title reigns, which really means, the lengthiness of the title reigns, which John Cena has had a couple, good title reigns, and John Cena, I would say, definitely is the better champion, especially with, just maybe one of his title reigns, which was from September 2006 until he had to vacate the title in October of 2007, and did a lot of great stuff during that title reign, so I would easily say John Cena was the better champion. There's another question you asked me, but it's kind of, one of those complex questions that will take almost a separate video. So I actually kind of asked, what would be my card for, a dream TNA versus WWE card. And, that's one of those questions that will take a separate video. It's one of those things I really wouldn't want to, even think about because, even though I do not like the direction TNA is going right now, I think the last thing that anyone that is like me that's a little critical of the direction TNA is going right now wants to see TNA go out of business. I mean, I want TNA to succeed. I want them to just improve as an organization. I don't want to see them die. I think something like, a dream card would be interesting to talk about, but it's not one of those things, I really want to discuss that much anyway. Like I said, it's one of those things that would take a separate video anyway. And then the next question is from 111 Clancy 111. The first question you asked, you kind of asked, what movie out of these four I like the most? The Godfather, Goodfellas, Scarface, or Godfather 2. Go with the original Godfather. Godfather, the original, was an excellent film, probably one of my favorite films of all time. And all those are great films, but I would, take the Godfather over all the other three. And then the next question, and what is my favorite WWE match and gimmick of all time? My favorite match in WWE history is from WrestleMania 13, the Austin versus Bret Hart I Quit match. Just an excellent match, good storytelling, and it was really that match that really defined Stone Cold Steve Austin, really transformed to the level that he became the star that he did years later. And my favorite gimmick match of all time, I'll go with the ladder match. I always like the ladder match. Cage matches I like, but the cage matches aren't, up to the level they were back in the 90s, or I would say even 5 years ago. They're pretty much now just used as, an attraction other than trying to actually have a good match out of it. Then the next question is from Glurples. What kind of TNA Impact do you like? A wrestling-based one or an Impact with mainly promos and talking? Obviously, a lot of people are expecting me maybe saying I would much rather see, just a wrestling-based one and that's it. That's not the case. What I would want to see with TNA Impact is an Impact that, has good wrestling quality on it, have, solid wrestling on it, but you don't have to have, every match be a pay-per-view quality match. I would say you at least need to have one match on that definitely seems like pay-per-view quality, either a great X Division match or a very great main event or a good solid women's match on there, and just have a good balance of that with promos and talking and building up to your pay-per-view, which is one of those things TNA doesn't do good at all, is hype up their pay-per-views in a way that makes people want to go out their way to check out the pay-per-views, which is one of those things I think even during the eras when I actually liked TNA, they didn't do the greatest job with, was selling the pay-per-views. They're still not doing that good of a job with that, and the buy rates just completely show that they're not doing a good job at that. So I want to see a good mix of wrestling and promos and building some stuff up. And just, building, some of the younger stars, and at the same time, you don't just have to push the young stars, but you have to make stars for the future if you want your company to succeed at some point. Next two questions are from TNA WCW fan. What was your opinion of the Hardcore Championship? My opinion of the Hardcore Championship, I would say it was one of those things that was at least entertaining. Now, was it, was it one of those things that was, going to be a great championship or anything? No, I don't think it was really anything like that. It was just a good entertaining thing. As much as, I would hate to admit it, and probably other people would hate to admit it, that stuff with Crash Holly with the whole 24/7 reign was some priceless, good comical stuff mixed in with some good entertainment. It was at least good entertainment value. But it was one of those things you understand why it's no longer around today. It ran its course. The next question, as a rap fan like you, what did you think of Master P's skit in WCW in the 1990s? Back in the day, and now looking back, I don't understand why I ever did, but I would say probably 97, 98, for some reason or another, I actually did like Master P. I did like some of his stuff. Looking back now, I don't like any of that shit at all. But, the whole Master P skit in WCW was nothing more than a complete joke. The stuff they did with the No Limit Soldiers versus the West Texas Rednecks, it was just nothing good at all, and it, made WCW look like a joke, and it made even, Master P doing it, which was, at that point, he was one of the, biggest hip-hop stars at that era, and, it hurt both sides. It hurt the wrestling business a little bit, made WCW look like a joke, and at the same time, it kind of made the hip-hop industry at the time look like a joke, or at least make Master P look like a complete joke, which pretty much now he is. And then the next question is from Mr. Ricker89. I just recently saw Righteous Kill with Robert De Niro and Al Pacino. Most gave it a bad review, but I thought it was a great movie, especially with the twist in the end. Did you see it, and what did you think of it if you have seen it? I definitely agree with you about Righteous Kill. It's one of those films I don't understand, just like you said, I don't understand why this film has not been given, at least somewhat of a good review, or say it's at least a decent overall film. A lot of movie critics have completely trashed this movie. I don't understand why, because I did find it an enjoyable film. And was it one of Robert De Niro's, Al Pacino's greatest films of all time? No, but was it an enjoyable film? Yes. And speaking of Mr. Ricker89, I told him I will plug his channel, so I forgot to do that at the beginning of the video. So check out his videos. If you like what you see, subscribe to him. I'll put the link in the description. Then the next question is from Instant Classic G1. Do you think a wrestler establishing himself as one character and then completely changing it is a bad thing? Example, Austin Aries turned into Austin Starr. At some points, it's kind of one of those things that hurts the credibility of the performer a little bit, like the Austin Starr stuff. Now, I actually didn't mind the Austin Starr gimmick, and I wouldn't even mind if Austin Aries did the Austin Starr gimmick. I just think TNA took it to the level that they, made it too much in a type of comical gimmick instead of a gimmick that could have been a little comical, but at the same time make the performer under the gimmick actually seem a little credible, which was the problem I had with it. Next question is from the Wrestling Hero. Does TNA need a upper mid-card title? I mean, they have tag titles and a world title. Shouldn't they have the mid-card title? This has been one of those questions that a lot of people have been asking that TNA needs at some point in the future is a mid-card title. And the X Division title just isn't cutting it because they're not really booking it in the way that the X Division title should possibly be booked. The whole, premise behind the X Division is there's no limits, so they should, exploit that whole thing that there's no limits. Maybe having some guy like Matt Morgan, at least be in it, go for the X Division title, and at least, make it seem like that, gimmick or that moniker you have under the X Division that there's no limits actually means something. I would say at some point they do need a mid-card title because the X Division title ain't really cutting it, and obviously the Booker T's Legends title isn't cutting it either. So they need a mid-card title for some guys like, Matt Morgan, Abyss, Booker T, if AJ Styles or Samoa Joe ain't in the main event right, then they need some title to go against that actually makes them seem like they're actually doing something with TNA. There's a couple other ones, say if, James Storm and Robert Roode of Beer Money Incorporated, say when that tag team breaks up, if one of them elevates to the main event, the other one obviously needs to do something. So they need a mid-card title at some point. And the next question, do you think D'Lo Brown should wrestle full-time in ROH? I would definitely say I would like to see D'Lo Brown full-time in Ring of Honor, which I think they're probably going to do there. I think they're going to build up to, at some point in the future, kind of like what they did with Jerry Lynn at the beginning, book him on various shows, then end up announcing that he's on the full roster, which I see D'Lo Brown doing. I think D'Lo would be a good guy for, some of the young stars to learn from, and D'Lo could possibly teach some of them, train some people, and, just teach some of them, maybe the art of selling, stuff like that. And I think D'Lo will be a good fit in Ring of Honor. Same with Jerry Lynn. I'm glad, he's in Ring of Honor full-time as well. Next question is from the Deadman88. What are your thoughts on Tony Dungy retiring as Colts head coach? And do you think it will make a big impact on the team? Now, first, Tony Dungy leaving, I didn't think that was going to have an effect at all. But the one thing that's definitely going to affect the Colts is Marvin Harrison no longer being with them. And, Marvin Harrison and Peyton Manning were probably one of the best two-men, parts in the NFL, in the history of the NFL, as far as how they work together. And I think that's going to affect Peyton Manning a lot. Now, Peyton Manning is a great player, but obviously, with the loss of, a great coach like Tony Dungy and then Marvin Harrison, one of your great players, that's really going to affect the team. And I can say this possibly could affect them to the level of them not getting in the playoffs, especially since they're in the AFC. If they were in the NFC, I would say, okay, since NFC is so weak, they would have a chance. But the AFC is pretty, strong with teams, and there's a lot of, strong teams in the AFC that I think the loss of those two, the coach and the player, Marvin Harrison, could definitely really affect the team. The next question is from Coffee Ninja B8. Not including wrestling, what are some of your favorite current TV shows? Do you watch Lost? What about all-time favorite TV shows? Some of my favorite current TV shows, which are a very small list of TV shows that I enjoy, because there's not that much great TV shows anymore nowadays. As far as some of my favorite current ones, I like a lot of the animated series on Fox, like The Simpsons, American Dad, Family Guy, even King of the Hill is pretty decent. I like a lot of the HBO series like Entourage. Just recently got into the series Big Love. True Blood's an excellent show. Can't wait for the second season coming this summer. And a couple other shows I like. I like the remake of Knight Rider. That's excellent. I would recommend people to go out the way to see. Completely hate and despise any of these reality shows. I don't understand why they have to have so many of them, but hey, they draw ratings, so I guess that's the reason why they have to have them. Like the Showtime series Weeds. Actually, I've seen one or two episodes, or maybe it's only one or two episodes right now, of the executive produced show on HBO, the Eastbound and Out, which is, I think, produced by a couple people, and one, namely in particular, Will Ferrell. And I gotta say, he guest stars, I guess, on a couple upcoming episodes on it. And I gotta say, that's a pretty, fun show, funny show. As far as, do I watch Lost? Haven't seen an episode of Lost or Heroes. Understand a lot of people like it. Haven't really went out my way to check either one out yet. Have seen The Office, though, and it's one of those shows that I don't understand why so many people like. I checked one or two episodes out, and I thought it was decent, but nothing, really laugh out loud funny. Maybe I didn't catch the best episode of it or whatever, but I didn't find anything that great about it, and I like Steve Carell a lot. And some of my favorite all-time TV shows, my favorite show is Seinfeld and Frasier. I like a lot of the late 60s, early 70s shows like I Dream of Jeannie, Bewitched, All in the Family, The Jeffersons, Three's Company. I like the show Alf. That's very funny. And there's a couple other shows I like as well, but those are pretty much the main ones I like a lot. And like I said, not that many TV shows nowadays are that great anyway. Next question is from You Can't See Me 69 Triple H, 619 Triple H. What faces in WWE would you like to see turn heel? The one face that I would like to see turn heel, and I think it's going to need to be happening at some point in the future to really rebuild this star and really make him back into the main event level star that he should be, which is CM Punk. I'd love to see CM Punk turn heel at some point, and I think he's a good solid face. but I think he works a whole lot better as a heel, especially if anyone's seen any of his ROH title run that he had for about 2.5 months, where he was pretty much a very strong heel in Ring of Honor, and other stuff he did in Ring of Honor when he was a heel was great as well. So he's one of those stars I'd love to see turn heel at some point, but I don't see it happening. It's not going to happen anytime soon. And then the other question kind of, reversed around, what heels in WWE would I like to see turn face? See, this is one of those things, I can't really think of any heels in WWE that I want to see turn face. I think, you need to have the strong heels, like, you need to have Edge stay heel, you need to have Orton stay heel, and, you don't really got that many strong heels. JBL needs to stay heel because he's not viable as a face, and, that's pretty much, most of the guys that are heels probably need to stay heels. Maybe some point down 1-2 years, maybe, Orton or Edge, you could turn face at some point, but I think they're doing so good as a heel that they don't need to really mess that up and keep them as a heel for at least a good portion of their career, because they're much better as heels. Next question is from Rick Model Martel. Do you think it's always important to have a heel and babyface commentators working together? Because Jerry Lawler comes across as a babyface commentator and has done so for the past several years. The Jerry Lawler I watched in 1999 was one of the biggest heels of all time with some of his outrageous comments towards the Hart family. But today, Lawler and Cole come across quite boring and not really involved. I know WWE are trying to attract a younger audience, but would you like to see the old Jerry Lawler back, or even more heels and babyface commentators? I would definitely like to see Jerry Lawler back to himself that he was back in the 90s, and not just, the guy that, just sits there and is pretty boring and just says, puppies and shit like that. That was maybe funny a couple years ago, but now it's, not funny at all. And Jerry Lawler, I would like to see him return to it as himself, and I would definitely agree with what you said about Lawler and Cole. They come across very bland and boring on Raw. The ECW commentators keep them like they are. They're kind of like the younger commentators, so they don't really need to be, heel and baby face or anything. I'll say kind of they work more as, tweeners. JR and Taz, they work very good with each other, so they don't need to do it. And I don't think anyone wants to see, some heel and babyface thing with Mike Today and Don West. But it would definitely work out with Lawler and Cole. And I think, sometimes the heel and babyface commentators work out, especially, back in the day when you had Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan. That was probably the best, heel and babyface commentators, especially some of the stuff Bobby Heenan did. Gorilla Monsoon always pulling for the heels, and Bobby Heenan pulling for the heels, and like I said, Gorilla Monsoon pulling for the faces all the time. I definitely like that. And, even Ring of Honor is kind of starting to do it now with Dave Prazak being a heel commentator and Lenny Leonard being a face commentator, which I think really shakes up the commentator booth and really helps, the commentators seem at least a little more enjoyable. Next question, do you think the Royal Rumble 2000 is a little underrated? I'll definitely say the Rumble from 2000 is definitely an underrated pay-per-view. I would say, it's not one of the greatest Royal Rumbles, but I would say it's definitely a very enjoyable Royal Rumble. With the Royal Rumble match was very good. Triple H had probably one of my favorite matches in his whole entire career against Cactus Jack in the Shriek fight they had. A lot of great stuff in there. You had the Hardys versus Dudleys in the tables match. And you had Kurt Angle's debut against Taz, which was pretty entertaining to watch. And overall, it was a very enjoyable Rumble. And it is one of those Rumbles that you barely ever hear anyone say anything good about or ever mention that it was a very good Royal Rumble. But I would say, yeah, overall, it is one of those that does seem a little underrated. Next question: What are your favorite shoot interviews? What are your favorite shoot interviews you've ever seen? Whether it be RF Video, High Spots, or any others, and who's the biggest straight talker you've seen in shoot interviews. As much as I hate to admit it, the company that does the best shoot interviews is RF Video. As much as I hate the company, hate Rob Feinstein, I gotta admit that RF Video has always been one of those that probably make the best shoot interviews as far as the whole history of shoot interviews go. I would say right now, kayfabe commentators are starting to really put out some of the best, or at least original shoot interviews and shoot ideas for wrestlers to do, and or wrestling personalities to do. I think they are doing the best right now, but our video is overall probably the best one out of them. I would say one of my favorites as far as straight talkers are probably like Jim Cornette, Bobby the Brain Heenan, Percy Pringle, aka Paul Bearer, and the Honky Tonk Man. Those are the 4 guys that, you know, really hold no punches in shoot interviews, and really, they don't really bullshit you at all in shoot interviews. They tell you a lot of stuff in shoot interviews, and they tell you in a way that's always enjoyable, and they tell you in a way that's, you know, telling you a lot of information at the same time, keeping you entertained with a lot of funny stuff they're saying as well. Next question is from Furby2056. With Petey Williams being released from TNA, do you think that WWE will bring him aboard? Petey Williams to taking on Shelton Benjamin and CM Punk will be a very good match in my mind. Petey Williams, in this question you said Petey Williams and Eric Young, but I gotta correct that. Eric Young, you asked me this question probably right when Petey Williams got released, so at that point it did kind of, there were rumors that Eric Young was going to be gone from the company, but that was, you know, just a rumor that ended up not being true, and Eric Young's still with the company. But as far as Petey Williams, I don't see WWE bringing him aboard because, for one thing, he's too small for WWE, and not only that, if he wants to go to WWE, obviously they're not going to allow him to do the Canadian Destroyer, which he has more than that, but that's one of those things that really puts him over as a star, is, you know, his original finishing maneuver that he does, and WWE would never allow him to do it. I would see him more likely to go to Ring of Honor. Then the last question is from Irish Shock. If Bret Hart were able to have one last match, who would you like to see him against? If Bret Hart was able to ever able to have one last match, the one guy I would love to see him take on is Kurt Angle. I think it would be an excellent match, and I think, you know, the only other person I would see Bret Hart going against that I would love to see is you know, Bryan Danielson. But I would say Kurt Angle versus Bret Hart be the bigger of the dream matches, because that would be an excellent match. You know, just have them go out there and perform, you know, for maybe 25, 30 minutes, maybe make it a 30-minute Iron Man match or something like that, or a submission match, and you'd see probably an excellent match. And yeah, that's it for this Q&A. Obviously, like you all know, for my next Q&A, just send in your questions through a comment on this video only, or through a personal message, which is what I prefer, is through a personal message, or a comment on my channel. And yeah, that's it. Peace.